Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are looking at arguably the absolute most famous lost civilization in human history. I mean, it's a subject that has literally captivated historians, explorers, and, well, pretty much everyone for over 2 millennia. We're talking, of course, about Atlantis. This legend really represents the ultimate human fantasy, right? A highly advanced utopian society that was just wiped from the face of the earth overnight, leaving behind nothing but echoes. But what's the actual truth behind the legend?
Okay, let's dive into this. The entire core of the Atlantis mystery really boils down to one single massive question. Was Atlantis a literal, physical place that suffered some sort of catastrophic natural disaster, or was it purely a philosophical allegory, just invented to teach us a moral lesson? It's a mystery that millions of people are still actively trying to solve today.
I mean, just think about that for a second. A highly advanced utopian society that was wiped from the face of the earth overnight. It just has this incredibly grand, mythic allure to it, doesn't it? It frames the whole story not just as some dry historical footnote, but as a romantic tragedy. It's like the ultimate ancient crime scene where an entire civilization just vanished without a trace, completely swallowed by the sea.
Moving into Section 1, Origins of the Myth, the Prime Witness.
So to solve literally any mystery, you have to start at the very beginning. And for Atlantis, we have exactly one primary witness, just one, the ancient Greek philosopher, Plato. Every single thing we know traces back to this one source. Around 360 BCE, Plato introduced the story in two of his famous dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. Now, it is absolutely vital to remember exactly who Plato was. He was a foundational figure in Western philosophy, a student of Socrates, and a writer who was incredibly famous for using allegories, like his well-known allegory of the cave, to convey really complex political and moral ideas. Keep that in mind because that context is absolutely crucial. And this brilliantly illustrates where things get a little complicated. See, Plato claimed he actually didn't invent the story. According to him, a Greek statesman named Solon heard it from Egyptian priests way back around 600 BC. But, wow, here is the catch. Those priests claimed Atlantis existed 9,000 years before their time. That places the era of Atlantis at roughly 9600 BC. We really have to ask ourselves, how on earth does a story accurately survive a massive 9,000-year gap before it's finally written down by Plato? Which brings us to Section 2, Plato's Lost Utopia, the crime scene. If Atlantis is just a myth, you have to admit it is an incredibly detailed one. Plato placed it exactly beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which is the modern-day Strait of Gibraltar, meaning it was this massive power out in the Atlantic Ocean. The capital city, built with perfect concentric rings of alternating water and land, all constructed from red, white, and black stone. They engineered these massive, sprawling canals connecting the rings directly to the sea, complete with huge subterranean docks. And politically, it was ruled by a coalition of 10 kings, all supposedly descendants of Poseidon himself, making it a truly formidable naval superpower. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer extravagant wealth Plato described. It's just staggering. The island was bursting with exotic wildlife. They even had elephants. But their absolute crown jewel was something called orichalcum. It was this mysterious, highly valued gleaming metal found abundantly all over Atlantis. They allegedly covered the entire outer walls of their central temple in pure gold and this glowing orichalcum. But as with all great tragedies, this utopia was completely destined for a downfall. So why was it destroyed? Plato outlines a very clear three-step sequence. Step 1, the Atlanteans slowly lose their divine grace. Step 2, basic human nature takes over. The society becomes deeply corrupt, greedy, and aggressively imperialistic. They actually attempted to conquer the entire Mediterranean world, including ancient Athens. This unbelievable hubris leads directly to Step 3. Zeus and the rest of the gods unleash their absolute wrath as punishment. And let me tell you, that punishment was nothing short of apocalyptic. Plato writes that, quote, in a single day and night of misfortune, violent earthquakes and floods devastated the island. Just like that, the entire magnificent empire sank beneath the waves, leaving behind nothing but unnavigable mud shoals. It's just an incredibly dramatic, terrifying conclusion to the whole saga. Let's move to Section 3, Hunting for the City, the Global Manons.
Because Plato gave such hyper-specific coordinates, people literally haven't stopped looking for this place. So let's play investigator for a second and cross-examine the internet's favorite locations with some cold, hard geological facts. First up, Santorini. The Minoan civilization there was wiped out by a massive volcanic eruption, which honestly matches the destroyed in a day and night narrative perfectly. But the scientific reality? It's completely the wrong timeline, only about 900 years before Plato, not 9,000, and it's in the Mediterranean, not the Atlantic. Okay, next, the Richat Structure in Africa. The concentric rings look exactly like Plato's description from space, but geologists confirm it's just a completely natural eroded dome with absolutely zero human artifacts. Then we have the Bimini Road in the Caribbean, often claimed to be submerged ancient walls. Well, science shows it's actually just natural, tessellated beach rock that naturally fractures into these rectangular shapes. Finally, the Antarctica theory, which claims the Earth's crust shifted the whole city down there. Except ice core samples definitively prove Antarctica has been covered in solid ice for millions of years. So no Atlantis there.
Let's look at something a bit more credible, a historical comparison: southern Spain and the ancient civilization of Tartessos. Satellite imagery actually shows these really fascinating circular anomalies in the mudflats right outside the Pillars of Hercules. It's super intriguing, but the archaeological reality is a very different story. While Tartessos was indeed a wealthy trading civilization that mysteriously collapsed, absolutely no ruins or inscriptions or artifacts bearing the name Atlantis have ever been found there.
On to Section 4, the scientific verdict. Case closed?
It is time we look squarely at the mainstream scientific consensus. I really need to hammer home this number for you: 9600 BCE. This date is scientifically, categorically impossible for the story Plato is telling. Mainstream history shows us that back in 9600 BCE, human civilization hadn't even developed basic agriculture yet. Plato is describing an Iron Age-level naval empire with advanced metallurgy and complex urban planning existing right smack in the middle of the Stone Age. It just doesn't fit the established timeline of human development in any way, shape, or form. So, the absolutely crucial point is this: plate tectonics and modern ocean sonar definitively confirm there is absolutely no missing sunken continent in the Atlantic Ocean. Modern science has mapped the entire Atlantic ridge thoroughly. Plato's exact geographical coordinates are just scientifically impossible. The continent simply isn't there, and geology proves without a doubt that it never was. Now, to be totally fair to the believers out there, archaeologists have absolutely found advanced civilizations that suffered from catastrophic natural disasters, like the Minoans we mentioned earlier. We've even found actual real sunken cities, like Pavlopetri in Greece, which proves that earthquakes and sea level changes really can submerge entire ancient settlements. But here is what we haven't found: anything related to Atlantis. Zero physical artifacts, zero inscriptions, and zero ruins belonging to a massive global empire. Real history always leaves some kind of physical trace. Atlantis has left absolutely none. And that brings historians to a very, very clear conclusion. Atlantis was almost certainly a philosophical allegory. It was a fictional narrative invented by Plato to serve as a stark warning against the dangers of imperialism and moral decay. He essentially used the greedy, corrupted Atlanteans as a giant mirror to reflect human nature, contrasting their incredible hubris with his own personal vision of a perfect, disciplined, ideal society, which conveniently in his story was ancient Athens. Finally, Section 5, the enduring legacy: why we still search. So, you might be wondering, if science is so incredibly sure about this, why do we still care so much? Well, it's because Atlantis taps into this incredibly deep psychological archetype of a lost Eden, a perfect world that was just tragically taken away from us. It fuels this deeply romantic hope that humanity was maybe once greater and wiser than we are today. Furthermore, myths exactly like this one inspire actual real-world discovery. Remember, the city of Troy was considered pure 100% myth until it was literally dug up in the 19th century. Because of all this, Atlantis has totally transcended ancient history to become a massive cornerstone of modern pop culture, popping up in everything from blockbuster movies to literature and video games. And let's be honest, the stakes of the search are just incredibly high. Discovering Atlantis would literally force a complete rewrite of human history from the ground up. If it were found, it would undoubtedly be the greatest single archaeological discovery ever made. It would push the invention of urban planning, complex government, and metallurgy backed by thousands of years, opening up a brand new window into ancient engineering that we can't even fathom. So we are left with one final lingering question. Is Atlantis just a heavily distorted, exaggerated memory of a real ancient disaster that was passed down through generations?
Or is it simply Plato's greatest philosophical warning, carefully designed to hold a mirror up to our own human nature? Well, until the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean give up all their secrets, Atlantis is going to continue to drift somewhere right between myth and reality. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning what lies beneath the surface.